All right. Tonight we begin a series that will run alongside of our Stuck series. And if you're looking for a title for the series, I don't know if you're a note taker or not, but if you are, this whole series is going to be called The Four Sticky Words. The Four Sticky Words. Obviously, we're Stuck is the Sunday morning series. If you have your Bibles, go back to John 15. That's where we're going to start again. But we're going to kind of unpack it a little bit more. It's interesting. You always gauge, what we did or didn't do by, kind of what I hear. I left you guys with the Now What challenge of trying to do one thing that would somehow connect you better to Jesus or the vine. And so that's kind of the challenge. And so I don't know if you've done that or if it's working for you. If it is, you share it. That's fine. Anybody tried anything weirdly different this week? It's working? If it's not working, don't tell us.
I think I've talked to you guys about the situation I have at work with my immediate manager, my supervisor. And what I've decided to do is, she feels threatened by me because of my experience. And what I've decided to do is, I was at a position where I was trying not to oversee or supersede her in decision making, and because she felt threatened. So what I've decided to do is approach her in a different point of view. And she is a young girl who's never managed before and is having a real tough time with it, to the point where her boss, the big boss, is at the verge of maybe making some decisions to get her out of the position. And I personally have gotten to the point now where she feels confident enough in me to allow me to work with her, so she could, not only learn from me, but gain her self-confidence. Because she had lost all her self-confidence because of some of the things that I had said, and she felt threatened. But we're at a point now that I've decided that I'm going to go at her in a different direction, and it's helping because she's now more willing to accept my coaching, because I'm doing it from a coaching point of view and less from a critical point of view. And because of that change in the process, because I don't want her job, but she seemed threatened that the big boss has made the statement kind of halfway that I can do that job better than her, and that makes her feel threatened. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to convince her she has nothing to worry about. She needs to rebuild her self-esteem to the point where she feels more confident, and I think it's working. Because now I'm making, whenever I go to her and making recommendations, suggestions on what we need to do in the department, she's not hesitant about saying, okay, let's do that. In the past, whenever I made recommendations like that, she felt threatened and she just wouldn't do it. And I think it was my approach, and not only my approach, but her boss's approach. And I think I found a way to kind of get in between the two of them, to kind of make it work for Sabrina, because Sabrina, she's a good girl, she has a lot to learn, but she's doing a much better job, and I want to see her succeed. I'm not there to take her job. I want to see her succeed. But my approach is different, and it's made things better for everybody, the whole department. One of the guys in the pantry has been promoting. Well, Deborah needs, the big boss needs to just get rid of her and put you in charge. And I keep telling him, that's not the way it's going to happen.
Sure.
It's not the way it's going to happen. That's not the way it's meant to happen. And I've actually encouraged him to be less critical of her when she makes mistakes. because it's easy, and it gets back to her. And then when she confronts him, he would deny it, which made it even tougher for her. But things have gotten better. I think my new approach, she's going to be better. I've been working with Eric to try to get him to be less critical and accept the fact that you've got to respect the position sometimes above the person until they can grow to be who they need to be in order to handle that position. Because she's young, I mean, but I'm doing my best to change that, and it's working. And hopefully, if my boss if the big boss is true to her word, she's going to try to wean me out of the position I'm in now, so Sabrina can be more in charge of the department, and not lean on me because the big boss would be super critical at times when I personally felt like she shouldn't be, because she was the driving force and Sabrina losing her confidence. But things have gotten better. So.
Change is tough. You know, and changes move us to different outcomes. There's no doubt about it. Now, we're going to go to John 15 here in just a second. But I want to say something. When I say this, you guys are going to know how true this is. I'm going to brag on myself. You know, I have the nickname Mr. Emotion. I am so in touch with my emotions as a person. You know, I have so many mercy gifts, and I'm very much in touch with my emotions, and I'm sympathetic, empathetic, all of those kind of things. I'm that guy. I mean, and I am. My emotions run the range of three things. I react to things by going, fine, good, meh. I mean, that's it. That's kind of, all three, that's the big three for me.
Are there more than that?
Yeah, no, there's not. And some of you men in the room understand that. But I've been working on the problem. There's an app for that. Name a problem. I'll tell you how I react to it.
My car broke down.
Okay, so my car broke down. I go to my wheel of emotion. I'm angry about that. Okay, now I know how to react. See, sometimes we have a hard time knowing how to react in a situation. Give me scenario. What's the scenario?
Kids freaking out.
Kids freaking out.
Joyful?
You're going to be joyful at that. You're going to love the fact that the kids are freaking out. See, we all need help coming to grips with what our emotion is. So this is the wheel of emotion right here. If you ever need to know how to react, you ever need to know how to play, if you ever seen the game show, Wheel of Emotion, this is it. It's an amazing thing. You can sit here all day. If you're ever in a conversation and you don't know how to react, go to the wheel. I've been using it now in counseling sessions. Someone's sharing their problems with me, pouring their heart out. Hold on a second. That makes me feel happy. How does that make you feel? I mean, and go back and forth. And I have found this to be an incredible tool. Now, emotions.
Yes, I want that. I'm going to try that on Gail.
Just take my phone. Just take my phone. The word, you say, is there a point? No. The word emotion comes from a Latin word, immovere, okay? And defined in simplest terms, emotion means to move, okay? Emotion means to move. Think of it this way. Something moves us to emotion. So when something happens, it moves us to emotion. Once we have the emotion and experience the emotion, then that tends to move us towards something else. So it's always about movement. Emotions tend to drive us sometimes because we react to things, and the way that we react then will drive us to that next thing that we do. And so, whether you're playing with the wheel or not, one of the things that happens is that emotions are part of who we are. It's part of who Jesus created us to be. And so for us, connecting to Jesus really is essential in keeping that emotional quotient in our life where it needs to be. It keeps our emotions in check. Because sometimes I've discovered that my wheel here doesn't always do what I want it to do. Sometimes it just doesn't give me the answer. I mean, now I'm sad. I mean, it doesn't give me the emotion I really need to respond with. And so if you go back to John 15, somebody read John 15, verse 5 out loud for us. You'll know this verse. We talked about it Sunday.
15:5.
Huh?
I am the vine, you are the branches. If a man remains in me and I in him, he will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you cannot do nothing.
Jesus tells the disciples, and we talked about it Sunday, I'm the vine, you are the branches. There's a relationship that is there. And for us in our life, anytime we remember that, when we are connected to him, and we make it about connection, not production, we're in better shape. The flip side of that is that anytime that I am doing things my way, I've stopped being the branch and I'm trying to be the vine, which always gets me in trouble. And there's a decision that we make as to how we're going to live. See, when we try to live our lives out of trying to do things our way, out of our own wisdom, we find ourselves in trouble. I've told you before, the dumbest song in all of human history is My Way. It didn't work out real well for Frank Sinatra. It worked out even worse for Elvis Presley. And yet people hear that song and think, wow, what an amazing song. It is a stupid song. And you never want that to be your testimony. And so we do it our way, and instead of connecting with Jesus, we try to find the answers in ourselves. And that always gets us in trouble. Some of the greatest examples of this are in the Old Testament. These are folks who don't have that luxury of that connection between the vine and the branch that we read about in the New Testament. And if you go back and start thinking about some of those heroes of our faith, and you think about the mistakes that they made, you recognize the importance of this connection that we have that Jesus is pointing out to his disciples. It's radically different than any way that we've been able to relate to God before. And so when we talk about being stuck, we have to come to grips with the fact that the way that we want to do things just isn't the best way. And I could be wrong about this. I've got a couple of fishermen in the room that can attest to this. But I have a feeling that probably in the Bible, somebody who could have benefited from this app was Simon Peter. I think Simon Peter could have used the Wheel of Emotion app and really been successful with it. Because he is a guy who is making his living as a fisherman. He's not a hobbyist. It's not a game for him. It is, he has to eat. And so if he's going to eat and make a living, he has to fish. And he has to fish and he has to be successful at it. So it means he has to catch fish, to sell fish, to eat. Now, he may eat some of the fish, no doubt about it, but he needs to sell the fish. It's not like he's going to go out on a Saturday on a jaunt. Let's just see if they're biting. We'll see how it goes. If he comes home with nothing, it's not a good day. There's no money in that day. He is a fisherman. That's how he makes a living. And Peter is one of those guys where he probably is not real good with his emotional balance sometimes. And Peter is probably one of those guys where, you know, there's a lot going on under the surface. His story, you're familiar with in Luke 5. In Luke 5, it's that story where Jesus shows up and Peter has not yet been called to be one of the disciples. Okay? But he is out there and he's been around Jesus enough to know that Jesus is an incredible teacher. Jesus is teaching one day, and so Peter and his crew pull up their two boats to the shore, and they're washing their nets, and they've been out all night on the Sea of Galilee fishing, and they're exhausted, and they want to go home and crash, and Jesus has other plans. Luke 5:3, somebody has that handy? Read that for us.
Stepping into one of the boats, Jesus asked Simon, its owner, to push it out into the water. So he sat in the boat and taught the crowds from there.
Now, interesting thing about Luke 5:3, and we're not going to spend a lot of time here, but it's just an observation, is that Jesus got into the boat. After he's in the boat, he looks at Simon and he says, "Can you push this boat out?" Jesus didn't ask before he got in the boat. Notice that. Jesus does not ask for permission, "May I come aboard, sir?" Jesus gets in the boat. And after he's already there, he says, "Will you push this boat out? I want to talk." I find it incredibly interesting that Jesus doesn't ask for permission to get in the guy's boat. He just does. He just assumes it's going to be okay. I don't think he's being presumptuous, because here's what you have to remember. Jesus has already healed Peter's mother-in-law by this point. So Peter owes him one, depending on how Peter feels about his mother-in-law. But I'm assuming that he must have felt pretty good about her. So, okay, yeah, I'll give the guy a ride. He give my mother-in-law. Yeah, made my wife happy. So Peter basically says, okay. So he is on page with it. And the natural acoustics of the water would allow a larger crowd to hear when Jesus is talking. So he's going to be in the boat. He's going to talk. And people will be able to hear his voice is going to carry. And verse 4 tells us that when Jesus finishes the address to the crowd, he says something else to Peter. Somebody read Luke 5:4.
When he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into deep water and let down the nets for a catch."
Yeah. Peter, a professional fisherman, has been fishing all night. He hasn't caught anything. So it's been a bad night. He's cleaned his nets out. He's ready to go home, but he's decided to stick around and listen to this guy who healed his mother-in-law teach. And then Jesus has the audacity to turn around and say, hey, let's go back out and try again. Peter has to be thinking, Jesus, I'll leave the teaching to you. Leave the fishing to me. He might be thinking, how about you stay in your lane? Preacher dude. But what he actually says is this in Luke 5:5. Master, we've worked hard all night and haven't caught anything. I would love to know the inflection with which he said that. Master, we've worked hard all night. We haven't caught anything. I don't know if it was quiet. Maybe he was a little embarrassed because he's a professional fisherman. He hadn't caught anything. Maybe this is a reflection on his ability to catch fish. But he tells Jesus, after all our hard work, we've come back for nothing. I think there's a sigh in there somewhere that the Bible doesn't tell us. Master, we've worked hard all night. We got nothing. I don't know if there's an edge to it. Maybe he gave a sarcastic, you got to be kidding me chuckle. I don't know, you have one of those? Guys, do you have one of those? I have one of those in my house. I use it sometimes. When something happens in my house and I don't really know how to react to it, I have this sarcastic chuckle. That's why I have an app. I need it. I need to flip the app instead of that chuckle. I think Peter might have said, Master, we've been at it all night. We got nothing. But if Peter would have used the wheel of emotion, I'm confident he could have used his feeling words, which are very important. Parents tell their children that all the time. Use your feeling words. How do you feel? How do you feel? How do you feel? Again, me being Mr. Emotion and being the great counselor I am, I just spin the wheel and I come up with my word. Happy. But Peter lets Jesus know, in whatever terms he does, that he's already tried. He has nothing to show for it. They hadn't caught anything. He makes an admission here that's pretty important. He admits that what he did didn't work. And my guess is that for each one of us, we've kind of experienced the same dynamic in our life, right? I mean, there's been moments where we have gotten to the point where, in spite of all our efforts, we don't have anything to show for it. We've tried to turn things around. We made an effort to be better, right? You've made an effort to be, if you're a parent, more consistent with your children. You want to be good with that. Maybe you've been more intentional in communicating your expectations to a loved one or a relationship. You've worked hard at learning to respond rather than to react. You know, some people react, and maybe you should respond. It's better that way. But you don't have much to show for it. You put in long hours. You've taken the initiative at work. You've made the extra effort in. You asked your boss what you can do to improve. You did all the things they suggested, but every time you had an opportunity to be promoted, they passed you by for somebody else. You tried to reconnect with a sibling maybe. You've done everything you could to try to make this sibling that you hated all your life like you now, but they don't. And you tried your best to make amends, and they just can't. They will not forgive you for dunking their head in the toilet when they were kids. They're just not going to forgive you for that. You've worked as hard as you can, and you can't make that go away. And despite your best efforts, nothing seems to change. And as a matter of fact, they seem to get worse. Now, all of that leads you to a moment where there's a lot of options of how you can feel. Back to the wheel of emotion. And on any given day, the combination of emotions to start crashing in, and remember what emotions are, right? Emotions come and you're moved to them by what's going on around you. And those emotions move you to something else. And so when those emotions come in, you begin to react. Let me give you some that you probably haven't experienced, but people you know have, okay? Discouragement. That's an emotion. I'll define it for you. It's a loss of confidence and enthusiasm. Let me use it in a sentence. When nothing changed between the mother and her teenage daughter, she struggled not to give in to discouragement. Discouragement. Got it? Sounds like an English class. But most of us know what discouragement is. We've been there before. You may have felt discouraged already this week. It's real. Discouragement is something that everybody battles. Here's another one. Fatigue. Now, we don't think of fatigue as an emotion, but it is. You get fatigue. Definition. Extreme physical and mental tiredness that comes from prolonged and concentrated exertion. I'll use it in a sentence. He started off strong, but at his pace wasn't sustainable, so fatigue set in. It is that I have done all I can do. I am worn smack out. Okay? Some of you have that. Now, you had discouragement and fatigue, oh, you're a mess. Because you're prone to say anything or do anything. Third thing, frustration. None of you have ever been frustrated, I know that. The definition is this, the feeling of being upset or annoyed, especially because of an inability to change or achieve something. When she didn't respond the way he expected her to, he slammed the door in frustration. I know none of you have ever done that. But frustration also, strong reaction. And the other one is anxiety. Maybe it's this, the feeling of worry or unease, typically when facing an imminent event or certain outcome that you have no control over. The 5-year plan for the business was turned upside down by an unexpected pandemic and left him overwhelmed with anxiety. All of those are a big deal. Emotions are tough. Now, and the list goes on. I have in my office a book called The Emotion Thesaurus. It's a writing tool, it's a writing reference guide. And each page of that book lists an emotion. And then all of the outward ways that you might express that emotion. Then it goes on and gives you a list of all the inward feelings that you have when you're experiencing this emotion. And then it gives you another list of all the feelings that you have if you suppress that emotion for too long. And then telltale signs that that emotion is now controlling your life. You say, well, why do you have that book? Because I'm a writer and I don't know anything about emotion. It's better than the wheel. And so when you're looking for words, you go digging, right? Emotion thesaurus. And so it helps you come up with those phrases and the words. It kind of put into words, because I have trouble using my feeling words. And so as a result, I go to a guide that will help me kind of write things out. On the dashboard of my car, I have lights that will light up periodically to tell me certain things that I should know. If you look at those dashboard lights and you read those correctly, it might keep you out of trouble. It might keep your car running, or maybe it won't. I had a rental car last week. The minute I turned it on, boom, I had a symbol, had a low tire. Gotta hate it when you have a low tire in your rental car. Because you're getting ready to leave town with it, you don't know if it's going to be a bad problem or whether it's just low on air and you're going to be okay. Call the guy, well, we don't have anything else, so just put air in and let's see what happens. Oh, this is going to go really well, right? And so sure enough, I put the air in tire and it was fine. But then, halfway through the trip, the maintenance light is on. What maintenance does the car need? It wouldn't tell me. I'm looking at the dash. I beat on the dash. Hey, I need to know what maintenance I'm talking about here because I'm not a long way from home. Don't need to worry about that. Call the guy back. Hey, look, I just rented this thing. First it was a tire, now it's a maintenance light. Do I have a problem here? Can you bring me another car? Nope, can't have another car for you. Can't do it that way. You're too far away right now, we can't do it. Just go with it, it's okay. If you have a problem, call us, we'll come get you and we'll get you set squared away. There are warnings that there's a problem. I wish people came with warning lights.
I'm glad you don't.
Oh no, I could steer clear of a whole lot of problems if people came with warning lights. Because it would change my approach to people all the time if I could see what warning lights were on before I got there.
They used to be called idiot lights.
Yeah, they did, I know. They used to call them idiot lights. But see, the problem is, if you ignore them, it's not an effective way to drive a vehicle. You need to do something with it. Now, it might mean nothing. I mean, I have come from the school of people that I know, that I have seen, and I've seen it in action where there's a light on the car. It doesn't mean that check engine light means nothing. We'll just put tape over it. Yeah, thumbs up back there. Yeah, there you go. Yep. And you know, and sometimes that really works out real well for you. And that's okay. You hear a noise in the car, you see a light come on, so what do? You turn the radio up louder. Because if the noise is louder than the other noise, you got no problems, right? You hear your brakes start to squeak when you stop. Well, you roll your windows up so you don't hear the brakes anymore. Or, on top of that, you just don't stop. Just don't stop. Just keep going. Don't stop. Don't use the brakes. It's not a big deal. You look for those lights, you try to figure out what they are, but if you keep ignoring those lights, eventually it catches up with you. If you keep ignoring the emotions, they will catch up with you. And so we come back to the story of Peter, and we'll wrap this thing up so you guys can get out of here, because this is what we need to get to. Before we think too much about the emotions, I want you to know that there is a best life for you out there, and for this course, we're going to call it your branch life. Okay? The branch life that God has for you. The branch life that God has for you when you're connected to the vine. Okay? Peter's way isn't working in the passage. Jesus tells him to do something else. Realize that Jesus told him to do the same thing he had been doing all night. Okay? The difference is this time Jesus is in the boat. It's the only thing that's different. So Peter's about to go fishing again, and he's going to throw down his nets again. But this time Jesus is in the boat. When he expresses to Jesus his reality of the situation, I've been fishing all night, he might want Jesus to say what we want Jesus to say to us. I'll give you an A for effort. You're a good fisherman. Here's your participation trophy. I know you tried really hard, and maybe things will work out next time. Notice that that's not what Jesus says to him. Jesus says, put that in the net. See, I get irritated with God sometimes, I'll admit it. When I feel like I've been doing my best, and then all of a sudden, God kind of gets in the mix, and I realize I just need to do it again. I hate doing things again. But there's a huge difference of doing things one time without God and doing the same thing with God. It's huge. And I think for most of us in our life, if we could stay connected to Jesus like he wants us to, we could do things right the first time instead of having to come back the second time. Peter's going to do the same thing again. This time he's going to get different results. And so Peter waits in silence for Jesus to change his mind. I guarantee you there's a pause in Scripture we don't get either. When Peter says to Jesus, you know what, we've done this all night. We've caught nothing. I think he waits. Because I think that Peter in his head, his expectation is, he's going to say, yeah, you did, don't worry about it. And Jesus doesn't. Jesus has an annoying habit. He waits. You ever notice that about Jesus? He waits. He waits on me. He waits on me to catch up to what he wants me to do. He does that all the time in my life. It's an annoying habit. I'm not going to tell him he needs to get over it because he's God. But come on, let's be honest. That's what annoys you, right? I mean, he's waiting on you. You remember the old hymn? Jesus is tenderly calling to you. Sinner, come home. Oh, terrible song that is. Anyway, Peter does what we have to remember if we're going to get this thing right. He throws the 4 sticky words. This is it. This is the punchline of tonight. Peter looks back at Jesus and says this: because you said so. Because you said so. Those 4 words will change your life. I promise. When you want to think about how do I connect to Jesus better, how do I get this thing right, how do I get past the frustration and the failure and the emotion and all the stuff when I'm trying to produce and nothing's going on, those words will change everything about you. When you look back at Jesus and you realize he's waiting for you to do what you're supposed to do, and you finally say, because you said so. See, Peter's response to Jesus is what moves him more than the way that he's feeling in the moment. My problem is that sometimes I allow those feelings and emotions to drive me to do the wrong thing. Let me tell you what Peter's feeling. He's frustrated, he's fatigued, he's disappointed, he's probably angry. Those are the emotions that he wants to move him to something else. What will they move him to? Picking up my nets, going home, and calling it a night because I'm done. That's what Peter wants to do. That's what every emotion in Peter is telling him to do. The only thing that changes that, because if that emotion is what happens when you're moved to a point, and that emotion is what moves you to do the next thing, the only thing that changes here is his response to Jesus. Because you said so. Those words will be used to move you no matter what you're feeling. Those words trump your feeling. Every time. And if you want to get this connection thing right, if you want this stuck thing to work in your life, and we're going to keep unpacking on Sunday morning, and we'll talk more about this on Wednesday night, but if you want it to work, you've got to learn that that has to become the prayer and the cry and the desire of your heart because you said so. Because you know what? Half the time, I don't feel like it. Life is tough. I'm tired. I don't want to. I've tried it. I've done it. I've done everything I know how to do. I've tried to be spiritual about it. God, I've asked you to bless it, and you didn't even bless it. Because I was doing it my way. But because you said so, that will move me beyond my emotion. Those are the 4 sticky words that you've got to learn. If you'll learn them, your life will be radically different. If you don't, you'll pick up your nets and go home. I promise you that. And so, we'll stop there tonight. We'll pick up there next week because we got to the 4 sticky words. Let's pray. Jesus, we thank you that you are a God who doesn't give up on us. And as crazy as it sounds, you're a God who waits. Those 4 words can change everything. Those 4 words scream volumes about who we're going to be in the next moment. Those 4 words set apart our life, because by saying them, we are making a declaration of where we are with you, of whether or not we're going to be stuck with you and on you and to you. And so, Lord, help us on this day to remember to make those 4 words a part of who we're supposed to be. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.